All right, so we are going to continue working on lab 4. For lab 4, we are going to create this slideshow or carousel. So we are using an API, a web API from pixabay.com, right? So let's take a look to what we have done so far. You can go to your Cloud9 and go to the labs folder. We are going to follow the tutorial. Where the tutorial is over here. So in this lab, we are going to mainly learn how to create HTML forms, right? This is the main purpose of this lab, is how to use HTML forms to get data from the form to the server. So over here, we are using different form elements. We are using a text, input type text. We have radio buttons over here. And we have a drop-down menu and a submit button, right? So we are going to learn how to pass the values from here to the server. So for that, we are using the an API. So let's take a look to the first lesson, lesson 1. Lesson 1 is about preparing the folder structure. We have already done that. We downloaded this zip file. We uncompressed it, and we uploaded it to Cloud9. And we became familiar with the content of each folder too. We took a look to the content of the API folder. Let's do that again. So for the API folder, I wrote this program called Pixabay API. What this program is doing is connecting to the API provided by Pixabay, and is returning an array of URLs, right? That's what it's returning. Later on, you are going to be requested, you are in a homework, another homework, you need to use your own API, not your own, an existing web API. Usually most web APIs are free. You can just request a web key, an API key, and you can access their information, right? Like you can access Walmart's information, Twitter, eBay, Amazon, all those. There's even one for Marvel, so you can get information from all of the heroes in Marvel. Okay, so let's take a look to the web API. You can just copy this URL over here. I will copy it and put it in a different tab, just to see the information that we are getting from this web API, right? So usually it's very helpful to see the data that you're getting from the API. If you're not getting any data, that means that probably something is wrong with the API. Right? So let's take a look to the URL. In the first class or the second class that we had a long time ago, we talked about the different parts of the URL, right? So do you remember the first part over here? This is the protocol. Then we have the domain name. Then the port, which is in this case 80. And then we have the path, right? Something that we didn't mention at that time is this part of the path. Sometimes the path is like a program, and the program is receiving some parameters, right? So parameters in the URL are separated by an ampersand. So whenever you see an ampersand in the URL, that means that there is a new parameter. So usually you will see a question mark. So question mark separates the file name or the path from the list of parameters, right? So you will see this question mark. So question mark means there are some parameters coming up. Then you have the name of the parameter, you have the equal signs, and then the value of that parameter. Then you have an ampersand, means that a new parameter is coming up. In this case, the parameter is Q, and then the equal signs, and then the value, right? And so on. You can modify the parameters, like over here we have 100. I can modify that and have 10 only. So I am displaying only 10 images, right? So you can display, modify the value, the Q value over here. I can look for order. And This over here will be images about others. So if I copy this URL and put it in a new tab, that's an image of the other. Right? And the same for the other images will be images of others. So we are going to be using this information. It's called, this property is called web format URL. That's what the program over here is displaying or adding to the array. Right? So whenever you get this information in the URL is because there are two methods to pass information from a form. I think you already saw that in the video tutorials, right? There's the get method and the post method. So you see all this information in the URL whenever the form is using the get method. So we are going to look at it when we create the form. So did we already create the index.php? Let's see what we have done over here. Yeah, we created that file. We created that last class, and we also added the code for Bootstrap. That's the next step in the tutorial. So just click where it says click here to get jQuery, and then click here to get Bootstrap, right? So we mentioned last class that Bootstrap is a library for CSS, right? So you can just click there, and you can get the CSS library for Bootstrap. The CSS library for Bootstrap requires jQuery. So we need to include also jQuery. So just click there. jQuery is a library for JavaScript. So download the link to jQuery. So, and we are going to put it all the way at the bottom, right? We mentioned that some programmers, some developers put the scripts in the head section. However, it's not the best practice because we want to render the content of the page first. And if we put all of this code at the beginning, the rendering is going to take 1 or 2 seconds to render, right? So we want to provide a very nicer user experience. So it will be better for the users to be able to see the content. If you open the jQuery library, I will just open it over here in a new tab. You will see that it's a lot of content. So all that has to be loaded. So it might take some time for the browser. So for that reason, we are putting it all the way at the bottom. The same for the JavaScript for Bootstrap. We also mentioned that it's important the order because this JavaScript that Bootstrap is using needs jQuery, right? So if you invert the order, it's not going to work. You have to load first jQuery and then Bootstrap. All right. We also mentioned that we are going to use our own styles. So we have a file called styles.css within our CSS folder. And we are importing that using this other syntax. So there are two ways to import an external CSS. This is one of them. And the other one is using link href, right? So you can use one or the other. Instead of using this syntax, we could have used over here link href and then the URL like this, right? And then you need to use rel, the relationship between this link. So this is styles. Just like this, right? So this is another way, well, it's href. Right? So you can use one or the other, but not both at the same time. Yes, Jeff?
So if the CSS style that could last overwrites the one before it, what does having that first CSS sheet do?
This one over here?
Yeah, so because the one we're importing is the one we're going to use, right?
we are going to be using this Bootstrap, right? However, we might want to add our own styles too. So Bootstrap adds some functionality and some predefined templates, right? But the colors, probably the colors are too gray. So you might not want to use the gray color that it provides by default. So you might use a different kind of color. You might want to use a different font, right? Okay. Not the one provided by default.
Our style sheet will only override like certain properties, and anything we don't assign this.
Exactly. Oh, okay. Yes. So yes, our style is going to override some properties. And it can even override some of the properties defined by Bootstrap, right? For instance, Bootstrap provides a property, or not a property, it's a style called a Jumbotron. Jumbotron. So just by using this ID, I think it's a class, it's not an ID. Just by using this class with this name, I can see this layout, right? This nice, great thing at the top. So this is because it's using a Bootstrap. So if I didn't use this name for the class, we call it Jumbotron 2, then I don't see that, right? So if I wanted to override or to change the background color of the Jumbotron from gray to no, red, so I need to do that in this file. So I will go to this file and then change the style of this Jumbotron to red. All right, is that understood? Okay. All right. So we are not going to be using the Jumbotron in this case, so we'll just remove that. We don't have anything yet, it's just a blank page. So let's take a look to the tutorial. We are now on step 2.4. So what we are going to do, we are going to change the background image. So we are going to use the image that we have in our folder IMG, the IMG folder. We have this c.jpg. So if we want to change that, we need to go to the style section over here. And then we are going to add CSS for the body. We want to change the background image. And it's going to be the IMG folder. Yeah, something like this, right? So that should change the background image. Yeah, it did. So we have our background image right here. Of course, every time I refresh this page, it's going to have the same background image. We don't want that. We want to have a different background image that is going to be related to the keyword that we are typing. So for that reason, we are going to replace this with a variable, right? So we are going to have a variable called background image. So since this is a PHP variable, we need to use the PHP tags. So this is going to be a PHP variable. So we need to initialize this variable. So we can go all the way at the top and have a PHP block over here to initialize that variable. So we are going to have the IMG c.jpg as our initial image, right? Something really important, we have to put this CSS rule in this program, right? We cannot put it, we cannot move this one, this code, and put it within our CSS, right? We cannot do something like this. It will not work. Why will not work? Why if I put this over here will not work? Exactly, because it contains PHP and this is a CSS extension, right? So it's not going to process the PHP. Yeah. Remember, every time you use PHP, you must have a file with PHP extension. So you cannot put PHP in a CSS file or an HTML file. It will not execute the code. Very good, Jason. So we cannot do that in the stars.css. So we should be able to still see the image. Okay, it's good. Right. Any questions so far? What we have done? So we have this background image. So let's move on. Next step. Okay, so let's display the message. We need to display a message. This message over here. Type a keyword. Right? So just copy this text. We are going to display it within the body. We are going to display it using an h2 tag. All right, so it should display something like this. All right. Let's move on. We are going to go to lesson 3. We are going to add the form. Whenever you add form elements, you need to surround the form elements with this tag form, right? So let's use that form tag. Again, whenever you have a form that is going to send data to the server, you need to use this form tag. If you don't have it, then the data is not going to get submitted to the server. You must have it, right? So we have that, and then we have to have this input type text. So we are going to get the input type text. Let's add it over here. Now, this name over here is the name that the PHP program is going to receive, right? So this name parameter is really important. You need to have a name. Usually, all of the form elements must have a name. So the PHP program or the server-side program doesn't have to be PHP. The same goes for Node.js or Python or Java. You have to use this name attribute to pass the value from the form to the server, right? So over here, we are going to call it a keyword. So we can see it. When we do that, we are going to have this text box over here. You can use a placeholder. And the placeholder is going to be displayed there, right? We also need a submit button. And you can have a value. And whatever value you specify for the value is going to be displayed within the button. You can have go. Any value you want to have. Okay. Now, when you click on that submit button, take a look to what is going to happen in the URL, right? I will click on it. So did you see what happened in the URL? The question mark was added, and also this parameter keyword was added, right? We have equals, and then we have nothing. If I type something over here, whatever I type is displayed in the URL, right? So again, whenever you have forms, there are two ways, two methods to submit data. One of them is using the get method, and another one is using the post method, right? So right now we are using the get method. If you want to display the information that you are sending to the server, let's do that. Let's display the information we are sending to the server. We can use echo and then get. And then the name that we are getting is keyword, right? That's the parameter. This case sensitive. So I will be able to display whatever I am typing like this. So whenever you submit information from a form, it's going to automatically be added to this array called _get. This _get array is very similar to the _session array. However, this one is going to be filled out. It's going to be, information is going to be added only when you are submitting data from a form using the get method, right? So let's save it, and then let's type something over here. And then you can see at the top that the keyword type was order. All right. So there are two methods to send data, get and post. Have you already used those two methods? What is the difference between get and post? And when do you think that you should use one versus the other one? Anyone has used any, yes, Mo? Yes, when you are putting information. However, you are also sending information, right? Yes, exactly. Not only the key, you are sending, in this case, you're sending the keyword, the layout, you are sending more information, right? Yeah. So in both of them, you send some information. So if you send information in both methods, what would be the main difference between one or the other? I think you get response in both of them too. Yeah. You get response in both of them. Yes, yes. Yes.
You like send information to the server, you actually have like extra information tagged on, I think. And you do something with that and then send something back, and then you just basically ask the server to send you whatever it's supposed to back.
Yes, so both of them send and receive information, right? However, the critical difference between get and post is that the get method is going to, you're going to see the parameters as part of the URL, right? Whenever you see this in the URL, that means that you are using the get method, right? So this is using the get method. If you don't see these parameters in the URL, that would mean that you are using the post method. So by default, the forms are using the get method, right? You specify the method by using the method attribute like this. So let's use the post method just for demonstration purposes. I will use the post method. I will need to refresh this page to use the post method. Now, if I type something over here, look at the URL. So nothing was added to the URL. So if you are using the post method, the parameters and the values are not added to the URL. If you are using the get method, I need to refresh this page first. Yeah, if you are using the get method, the parameters are passed as part of the URL. Usually you're using the get method. You don't need to specify the method because it's the default one. So you have it like this, right? So this means that it's the get method. But if you want to use the post method, you need to specify it like this, right? So when do you think that you should use the post method versus the get method? When will be some of the situations in which you should use the get method? I mean the post method instead of get. Yes, Matt.
Send something to a server that you don't want the user to be able to see.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, you're sending your credit card information with all of the information or your password, right? Somebody behind you might be just taking notes, right? Or like taking a picture. So it will compromise your data. So yeah, if you're sending confidential data, you don't want to use the get method. You want to use the post method, definitely. So another important thing to consider is like if you're using the post method like this, and I type something over here, I don't see it here, right? I don't see it as part of the echo that I have. Because when you're using the post method, all of the information you are sending is going to store in a different array. It's stored in the underscore post array. So PHP has two different arrays, one for post and another one for get. And again, the same happens in any other programming language. So they treat the get method and the post method differently. Right? So if I switch this to post and I type something over here, forest, I need to refresh the page first. Now I can see it, right? Because I am using the post method and the array is underscore post. So just be careful whenever you are using get or post, be sure that you are matching whichever method you are using in the form to be to use the specific array. So for this, since we are not sending any confidential data, we are going to be using the get method. So we are going to use the get array underscore get. Right? So I need to refresh this page again. Right? So I can see over here whatever I typed. Now, if I remove the parameter and the question mark over here, this is the very first time that I come to this page. If this is the first time and I haven't even typed anything yet, I still see this message over here, right? So I shouldn't see it because I haven't typed any keyword yet. So if you don't want to display this message, a way to hide this message is to find out whether the keyword has been typed or not, right? So a way to do a condition to check whether the keyword exists is using isSet. Again, this condition over here checks if there is a parameter in the URL called keyword. Right. So whenever I come over here and I refresh it, the first time there is no parameter called keyword, so it doesn't display anything, right? Now, if I submit something over here, now this a parameter called a keyword, then it's going to display that. All right. Any question about that? So using a similar approach, we are going to hide this message, right? We don't want to display this message if the user has already typed a keyword. So how do we hide this message? Can you try to hide this message? We don't want to display this information, these directions, if the user hasn't typed any keyword yet. Yeah, so if the keyword is set, that means that the keyword is being passed as the parameter, right? So we want to display this message over here only when there is no keyword as part of the parameter, only when you are coming to this page directly, right? So there are two ways to access the page. One of them is entering the URL directly without any submission of the form. And another way is submitting the form. You're already here, and then you're submitting the form, right? So when you're accessing the page like this directly without submitting the form, we want to display this message. But as soon as I type something and submit the form, we don't want to display this message anymore. The message should go away, right? So we already have over here this condition, right? So one way to do it just is having an else over here, right? And then we can just move this echo, this syntax, I mean this message from here over here. That would be one way to do it. Right. So when you come over here for the very first time, when you enter the URL directly, you will see the message. Otherwise, when you submit a form, you don't see anything, right? You can also check for other things, not only for the keyword, you can also check for the submit button, right? So the submit button can have a name. You can add a name to the submit button. Like that. And you can also check for the submit button, right? So you can do a condition like if is set submit button, right? That would be another way to do it. So there are several ways to do it. The way that we are doing it in the tutorial, we are checking if is set. Yeah, we are checking whether the keyword has been submitted, right? Okay, so let's go to step 3.3. Now we are going to import to include the Pixabay API. So just copy this code in 3.3 to get all of the images from Pixabay API. And let's do a print R so we can see what information we are getting from the API. Right? So let's do that. First, you need to include the file. The file is in the API folder. Bless you. And then we are going to use a function that we have in that folder, in that file. The function is called getImageURLs, right? And as you can see, the function receives two parameters. The first argument is the keyword, and the second one is the orientation. For the orientation, we have a default value. So by default, it's going to have the horizontal value, but we can change it to vertical. Right? So let's call that function. And this function is returning an array of images, right? So let's see, let's use the same name. We are going to call it ImageURLs. And then we are going to So we need to pass as parameter, we need to pass whatever the user is typing in the keyword, in the form, right? And we are going to use the print art only for testing purposes, just to make sure that we are getting something in that array in this variable. All right. Okay, so we are getting an array of different images. You can copy one of the URLs and put it in a new tab, and you should be able to see different images. Right? So we have an array of 100 images over here. Now that we have this array, it's very, very similar to the program that several of you did for assignment 2, right? So you have images, and then you were displaying the images as part of your assignment. Okay, so try to display the last 5 images. Can you try to display the last 5 images? So we can practice some of the functions in PHP. Take 2 or 3 minutes to display the last 5 images. So try to remember how to display, how to get the last item of an array. Remember which function you need to use to get the last item of the array? So create a for loop to display the last 5. Yes. Okay.
Doing a couple of strange errors. So for some reason, when I try to access these other files,
You have to have that's on string, right? So that is around these words. That's a string. Yeah. So try to display the last 5 images of the array. Let me know if you have any problems accessing the API or getting the array of images. You should at least be able to get all the images from the API. I'll be able to display this. Now, usually when this is something like that, we have a line. Comment out is UI. Only the UI. Usually when the service is seen, then you have a wire. Yeah, this goes. All right, so I'll be able to display the last 5 images for you. Okay, I think the most important takeaway for today is that whenever you are passing information from the form in PHP or in any other web programming language, there are 2 methods. One of them is the get method and another one the post method, right? So, and then in PHP, in order to get those values, you use these arrays. These are associative arrays. So one of them is the underscore get, and the other one is underscore post. When you get those values, you can do whatever you want with those values, right? So let's take a look to assignment 3. So assignment 3 is due in 2 weeks, but I will explain it so you can start thinking about what to do for this assignment. In assignment 3, we are going to use HTML forms. So you need to use at least 6 HTML form elements, right? Right now in this program, we are using 1, 2, 3, 4 elements, right? The radio buttons is 1 element over here. This is a group of the same element. We have the input type text. We have a drop-down menu, and we have the submit button. So there are 4 elements. Right? So you need to use at least 6 elements. At least 4 different types of form elements. So you should not have 6 text boxes, right? So you should combine different elements. You need to have text, checkbox, radio, select, number. You go to Google and search for form elements, HTML form elements. You can go to the W3 schools and see a list of different elements. You have text area, you have button, and so on, right? So you need to use different elements. These are all of the different elements over here. Let's go back over here. This is really important one. When you submit the form, the data has to be has to somehow change, has to be processed. You should not display the same information that you submit in the form, right? So you need to do something with that data. You need to validate for if it's set. So you can use you need to use the is set condition, or also the empty condition if it's empty. And you have to use CSS rules, right? So try to be creative. You can probably expand what you did for for assignment 2. So you can keep working on the same ideas as your assignment 2. Or you can do something completely different, right? Any question about this assignment? So you can have some kind of like, I don't know, converting from one unit to another unit, right? That would be a possibility. Yes. Yes. The examples were not that creative. So one of them was just repeating what he or she typed. Let me show you some of the examples. That will be for assignment 3. So over here, you're supposed to type your name, so on. And then when you sign up, you just see the same information that you submitted, right? So this is not very good. So in this case, the student didn't get these points for where is the rubric? Yeah, he didn't get these 25 points, right? So you the output should process should change the data, not only repeating the data. You're repeating the data again, you don't receive these 25 points, right? So don't do this. Yeah, this is not a good assignment.
What example if you don't display the written data but you display the
Yeah, just like the lab that we are working on right now, right? So it could be something like this. So you are submitting some information, but we are not displaying only the keyword back, right? We are displaying a carousel with pictures, right? Another example, for instance, I'm thinking of those of you who presented day before yesterday, like Derek, for instance, he had like different images, right? So he could have something like, how many trees do you want to include? Or how many snowmen do you want to include? Or what kind of different elements you want to include. So he can have a drop-down menu of different elements. You want to have like a sky or a sun or a moon, so you can pick an element. And based on all those elements, you can display the background, right? I don't know, that would be one option. So try to be creative so you can have multiple elements in the form. And based on the elements that you are getting, you are displaying something new, right? One of you did like a baby name picker, right? So you can have, do you want a name for a baby girl or a baby boy or a unisex name, right? Do you want, I don't know, like a Hispanic name or an English name? I don't know, how many syllables do you want in the name? 1 syllable, 2 syllables, 3 syllables. So yeah, there are so many options. So just try to be creative, right? Cool. Any question about that assignment? So, all right, so we have this array over here, and we want to select 5 images, random images. So let's take a look to some of, or let's take a listen to some of the suggestions that you might have to display 5 random images. So what would be some suggestions to display 5 random images in this array of 100 elements? There are many options, right? So I'm just mention some of them. What are some options? Well, you can start by shuffling. You can just shuffle. You can shuffle the array and then use the first 5 or the last 5, right? That would be unique images, right? You want to display unique images. However, the shuffle might be an expensive operation because it might take some time, right, to do the shuffling of 100 elements. Think about having 1,000 elements or 10,000 elements, and you just shuffle to get only 5 elements. Probably it's not. I mean, it will work. It will absolutely work, but it might not provide the best user experience because the user will have to wait 1 or 2 seconds, right, to see the output. So probably shuffling might not be the best approach. Probably you want to display all elements. Probably the shuffle will be a good approach because you need to display all of the elements anyway. But in this case, we want only 5 or 7 elements, right? So let's think about some of the approaches that you use in your assignment too. For instance, Brett, I think in your assignment, you selected an image, then you delete that element, right? So we can do something like that. We can select the element and then we can delete it. So it's a very similar approach we are going to be doing just as Brett did. However, I believe that in your approach, you were compressing the array by using array values, right? So in this case, probably array values could be a very expensive operation too, because we have 100 elements. So you use array values it's going to take some time to compress the array every time. So my advice to you is like, don't go for the very first approach. Just try to think about multiple solutions, not for this case, but for any other problem that you are faced with, right? Try to think about multiple solutions. Some programming languages provide functions that do things for you, but you don't know what is behind those functions. You don't know the code behind those functions. So some of them might take longer than if you implement your own solution, right? So, and you know now how to calculate the elapsed time. So you can have multiple options and then run it 100 times and see which one is faster, right? So what is another solution? Any other solution that you might think of about displaying 5 random images? So I think, yes, there is.
You're going to make an array of size 5 and
Yes.
have an integer that just randomly picks a number between 1 and 100.
Yes.
And then when that number is picked, you display that point in the array and then save that to the array of 5, so that way it can't be moved over again.
Okay, yeah, very good. And how do you avoid having duplicates?
The numbers that are stored into the array, like say the random number picks 2.
Yeah.
2 is stored into the array, and then it checks against the array every time it gets another number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that will work too. So you just need to have a separate array of 5 elements, right? And then you kind of loop with that until you get all 5 elements in that array. Yeah, that would be a very good solution. So yeah, there are many, many solutions, right? I think the one that we are going to use is a combination with what Brett did and also what Matt did in the lab, right? So you were using like a for loop. So we're going to combine those two ideas for that. So we are going to first pick a random number from 1 to 100. Then we are going to delete that element, I believe, right? We're deleting that element. And then we are looping many times until we get all 5 images. So let's see the code. And we are using the array rand, right? So to generate a random number. Now that's another important thing because right now we're displaying 100 images because we are using a very common keyword. But if you use a different keyword, you might get fewer than 100 images, right? So we cannot do a count from 1 to 100 all of the time because sometimes you will not get 100 images, right? So you will need to get a random from 1 to the number of elements that you have in that array. So remember that array rand generates a random index depending based on the number of elements that you have in the array. All right. So okay, let's take 10 minutes. You are going to keep working in the following 10 minutes. It's 110. From 110 to 120, let's work on lesson 3. Try to display the images. And then after 120, I will give the last 30 minutes for you to work in your teams so you can complete lab 3, right? So just take 10 minutes to work on this lab. I will walk around and I will help if you have any problems. We are in lesson 3. So try to complete as much as you can in lesson 3. What we are going to do, we are going to implement the gain of random images. So let's have